Alright, let's be honest, the last few years the GPU market has been an absolute disaster. But guys, AMD's been making some serious moves here to upset what feels like a monopoly at this point, and we're going to be taking a look today at a GPU that Nvidia has no answer for. And you better throw your body pillows down and pay attention, otakus, because Christmas has come early. That's right, in my hands right now is a very unique GPU with a waifu on the back. I know, hold it in fellas, but you can only buy this GPU in one place, and that is AliExpress, the same place that sent it to me, because they're doing a huge deal right now where if you spend over $100, you get $25 off by using the code ALONE, plus you can get $100 off the waifu GPU with code AEUS100. Thank you to AliExpress for sponsoring this video. Not only do they have this GPU, which we're going to be taking a look at today, but they also have stuff like this Logitech G Pro X mouse, a legendary mouse. You can get that on there as well. They got a ton of stuff, so be sure to check out the links in the description below. But besides the fact that this is a very unique, cool looking GPU, it also represents a pretty big threat to Nvidia, fellas, because it's bringing a lot of performance for the price. Now, before I reveal my secrets and tell you what this bad boy is, I want you to pause the video, go into the comments, and let me know what you think it is. I'll wait. Okay, we're done waiting. This is the RX 7700 XT, and I know it wasn't necessarily a beloved card when it was first launched, but you know what? It's gotten a price drop in a couple of places, and I think there's something about this card that people were overlooking. And of course, I'm going to be taking a deep dive and getting to the bottom of whether or not it's worth your hard-earned cash, especially if you're paying a premium for a premium design. But in any case, let's get into the benchmarks. So I decided to go ahead and use my 13600K test system. Thank you to Intel for providing the CPU. It also has 32 gigabytes of 7200 megahertz DDR5 provided by Kingston, and an SSD provided by Kingston as well. But taking a look at the first benchmark here, guys, you can see here that the RX 7700 XT is actually coming in with a very impressive stock score, where it's just behind the RTX 4070. And the one thing I think people overlook with these AMD graphics cards is that they do tend to overclock very well. As you can see, if we overclock the 7700 XT, it's now just behind the 7800 XT and now surpasses the far more expensive RTX 4070, and the 7700 XT can be found for around $440 typically now, so it's definitely looking, at least in synthetics, like it's a much better deal. But now let's go ahead and move on to some games, and I decided to test some games that I actually play that are also popular, so hopefully it's not only beneficial to me, but also you. And the first one is Apex Legends 1440p Ultra settings, and here you can see the 7700 XT is just behind the RTX 4070, and then the 7800 XT is a little bit ahead of both of them. But if you pay attention to the 1% lows, it is very, very close. And remember, the RTX 4070 was originally a $550 card, although I have seen it as low as $520 on sale at times, and it also beats out the 4060 Ti, which to this day still goes for between $430 to $450, meaning that you're paying essentially around the same amount of money for less performance. Moving on to another game, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 Extreme preset, and here you can see the 7700 XT is actually faster than the RTX 4070 by a small amount, and it is shown up once again by around 20% by the 7800 XT, but still not too bad. Then taking a look at a single player game, Hogwarts Legacy 1440p Ultra settings and RT reflections, and here it does a little bit worse, guys. It is behind the 4070 by a little bit once again, but the 1% lows are a little bit more significant this time, actually only matching the RTX 4060 Ti. But then moving on to another single player game, Starfield 1440p Ultra with VRS off. Here's a game that definitely does seem to prefer AMD, and you can tell because the 7700 XT, despite being significantly cheaper, is faster than the RTX 4070. Although once again, it is shown up by a fairly significant margin by the 7800 XT, which is only $60 more. But then moving on to Baldur's Gate 3 1440p Ultra settings, and here you can see there are going to be some scenarios where you're actually CPU bound, and this is one of them. And in fact, the 7700 XT is technically the fastest card here, and the 4060 Ti is the only one that's GPU bound. And for that reason, we're going to actually go ahead and leave Baldur's Gate 3 out of my average chart here. And if we do that, we can see here that the 7700 XT actually is pretty impressive, coming in with basically identical performance to the RTX 4070, despite once again costing significantly less. Right now, today, we're talking about $440 versus $520, and typically the 4070 is not that cheap. I do expect it will go back up in price, at least until the Super Series launches, making the 7700 XT a significantly better purchase, especially if you look at those 1% lows, where there's basically like a 1% difference between the 4070 and the RX 7700 XT. So really impressive stuff there. As you can see, the 7800 XT is still significantly faster on average, so if you can swing it, I would go ahead and upgrade to that for an additional $60. As on the 1% lows, you can see it's actually 28% faster roughly, which is a really significant amount, and I think some of that's coming down to the memory bandwidth as well as capacity, as I do know that typically these cards are very memory bandwidth starved, so I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. But if we go ahead and we take a look at the cost per frame, what you're gonna see here, guys, is the 7700 XT is actually fairly impressive. I mean, if we do compare it to the 4070, depending on whether or not you actually value the free avatar game that's coming with it, I'm sure a lot of people will, but I'm also sure a lot of people won't. Well, then we're looking at a situation where the 4070 in terms of cost per frame is gonna be 17 to 39% more expensive. That is pretty significant. Now, strangely enough, and not a lot of people are talking about this, but the 4060 Ti, it's actually looking not as bad as some people are saying, because I think that extra 8 gigabytes of VRAM is definitely going a long way. That is actually still 4 gigabytes more than what the RTX 4070 has. And if we do actually take a look at the cost per frame, which is based on 1% lows, which many times can be significantly impacted by VRAM, here's a situation where the 4060 Ti is actually only costing 13 to 35% more, depending on whether or not you value the game, than the RX 7700 XT. So that's actually very interesting stuff there. Now, of course, Nvidia does have their advantages, such as I would consider DLSS to be a little bit better than FSR2, and they do have higher adoption for stuff like their frame generation. But I would also consider that currently AMD has better compatibility for displays, and it's not only because of DisplayPort 2.1, which does allow you to hook up far more high bandwidth displays, but also they do just tend to have less driver issues, at least in my experience, when it comes to hooking up a lot of different displays. But that's just how it is now. Maybe that could change in the future. But with the 7700 XT costing significantly less and giving you nearly identical performance to the RTX 4070, to me, if I was tossing up between the two, I think it would be a no-brainer. I would go for the 7700 XT unless you know that you're going to be heavily using DLSS. Now, of course, Nvidia also does have the advantage of having better ray tracing, but to be honest with you guys, I'm not sure even with an RTX 4090 that it's worth using ray tracing, honestly, in most games, as it seems like even that card isn't fast enough still, especially for path tracing. But then you look at something like a 4070, which is significantly slower than that, and I definitely just honestly wouldn't even be considering ray tracing as a buying point right now, because even if ray tracing becomes the standard going forward, I just don't think the RTX 4070 or any other similar card is going to age very well in terms of ray tracing anyway. I mean, look at the 20 series that brought ray tracing. It's really struggling today. I think you're going to see a similar thing with the RTX 40 series. So overall, guys, to be honest with you, I think the RX 7700 XT, it's not bad at all at $440. I think if it was $420, it would be absolutely perfect. But if you can move up to the RX 7800 XT, that's even better. That's an exceptional GPU. And if you want one of these graphics cards, I do recommend taking a look at AliExpress just to see if you can find any wacky designs. I mean, even if you don't buy anything, it's just fun to see what they have on offer. I like to crawl through there. And also remember, they have that Logitech G Pro X Superlight. I made that for a good number of years. Now I'm on the Superlight 2, but it is still great, and it's available for a great price over there, especially if you can take an additional $25 off by using that coupon code. But honestly, with either one of these cards, they're both bringing a lot of grief to Nvidia, and it seems like they just, at least for now, don't really have anything to compete with them until maybe the RTX 40 Super Series. But hey, that's just what I think. Do you think that Nvidia has better GPUs right now, or do you think that AMD is the way to go? Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments below, and of course, I'll see you in the next video. If you made it to the end of the video, be sure to drop a like. Every time you do so, AMD and Nvidia release new GPUs. Also, if you want to see more, check out one of these related videos. You won't be disappointed.